Welcome back to the Sites podcast, our special edition, Beyond the Ledger, where we step outside of traditional finance conversations and explore the crossroads of fitness, wellness, and AI. Today's guest is someone redefining what wellness innovation means in the modern era. Meet Justin Campbell, a powerhouse behind some of the fitness industry's biggest digital transformations, from TRX, WaterRower to Gymlete, and so exciting now, the head of digital strategy and innovation at Gymtech. Justin blends commercial fitness, digital engagement, and real-world B2B strategy like few others in the fitness space. He's also the principal of WELLconnected Fitness, where he advises top commercial operators and fitness tech providers. So in this episode, we have a lot to unpack. We're going to talk about the hidden cracks in today's fitness business model, why the real enemy isn't disengagement, it's actually outdated philosophy. We'll talk about how gym tech is weaponizing data, AI, and service tech like Gymlete Track. Can't wait to chat about that. And the coming fitness tech supply chain cliff and how to future-proof right now. So let's go beyond the ledger and into the next evolution of fitness tech. Justin, welcome to the Sites podcast.
Oh, that's super excited to be here. That was an amazing intro. I appreciate the kind words. But yeah, I've been super excited to do this, as I shared with you on some previous calls. I just love your energy. I love your enthusiasm. I love your different lens at which you're looking through things, and your combination of AI and technology with your, combined with your fitness experience coming up through lifetime. I think what you're doing is awesome, and I was honored to be invited, and I've been looking forward to this conversation, man.
Oh, I'm so pumped and fired up. And I think as people will listen to this, they are going to have the same feeling I had when we first had our original conversation. It's just so intriguing on everything you've been cooking up, not only your record, right, and all the results that you've delivered within your career, but what you're up to. You have a lot going on, and I can't wait to jump into it, including your recent announcement, or soon to be very, very public announcement. So we'll jump right in. But why don't we go back a little bit and we talk about your journey. You have an impressive tech slash operator slash fitness and wellness background. I didn't mention it here in the beginning, but you actually played some arena football. Then you went to WaterRower, to Gymlete. I mean, walk me through the thread of your whole story and what you've learned along the way.
Yeah, no, that's great, and it's an interesting one, and one that I, as I look back, it's as we touched upon at the top when we were prepping, right, which is seems how everything has kind of happened for a reason. It's kind of led me to this spot, and it's just a slight correction. I didn't play arena football, but I did work on the team side in the Arena Football League, and that all started out. I did play small college football in upstate New York, little town Schenectady, home of General Electric, but it abuts Albany. And while I was playing ball there, we had an arena football team in Albany, and so they used a lot of our spaces as their practice facilities. Got to understand and got to meet their leadership, and eventually, right out of college, I actually went and started working for them. We were in Albany for a couple of years, won an Arena Bowl championship, which was awesome. We then relocated the franchise out to Indianapolis. We actually played in the then Conseco Fieldhouse, which is now, I can't even remember. It's changed a couple times, but it was just the same place where the Pacers just played in the NBA Finals.
That's right.
So we were, and that was right around the time the league was starting to kind of pick up. We had some NFL ownership come in. Jerry Jones, John Elway had a team. Bon Jovi bought a team, and they structured an NFL network television contract with NBC. So it was on Sundays. Unfortunately, with that particular game, though, I still stand behind it. It was some of the greatest football players. I mean, 80% of the guys in that league.
So much fun to watch.
80% of the guys had come from the NFL or went to the NFL. I mean, Kurt Warner, Oronde Gadsden, and the list goes on and on.
Right.
But a little bit like hockey, though hockey's done a better job with technology and stuff. It's a game built for live. It's so fast. It's so tight. It's so condensed. It really made it difficult on the television to follow. And so while I had the time of my life, I made some amazing friends that I still talk to today. I recognized that it was, the window was closing quickly without the television contract really taking off and starting to infuse the real revenue, which is which is what these professional sports leagues live on, is their big television deal. So
Sure.
I was in Indianapolis at the time. And I just, wanted to get back to the East Coast. I was born and raised, along the ocean. My family was here. I was still young, and which I loved Indianapolis. But so I moved back to the East Coast, and in the Northeast, there wasn't a lot of that secondary level sports, and so to get back into a team with, the Pats or the Sox, I would have really had to start all over again. And so
Right.
having played ball, having been an athlete my entire life, I always had an affinity for fitness. And so I happened to, see an ad for a sales job with WaterRower. I didn't know anything about the fitness industry, and didn't really even know anything about rowing at the time, for that matter. It was such an anomaly back then. But
Right.
they were introducing their very first commercial rowing machine, and they had historically been a residential, wooden pieces, all sold in specialty fitness retail environments. So my first job in the fitness industry was actually taking their M1 commercial high rise, and trying to move it into the commercial market. Lo and behold, today it's actually a signature piece at Orange Theory Fitness. So I'd like to believe I had a little bit to do with that. But it was interesting, right? So I
I've
started to learn.
dripped a lot of sweat on those rowing machines.
Yeah,
That's no joke.
and they're amazing machines.
Yeah.
And they 85% of your muscle, mass, you're recruiting during rowing. So it's one of the single best exercises you can do. But it got me to learning and questioning, and really, intrigued a lot to kind of, it's always in my nature to kind of be the tip of the spear. And so rowing was nobody knew anything about. And I was, you start to get into like onesies and twosies onto the floor. I wasn't going to really move the needle, but it was around the time, and I know you're younger than I am, but if you've been in the industry long enough, everybody, and still to this day, everybody understands that, spinning, and Mad Dog and Johnny G back in the day, but it was largely this incorporation of this programmatic methodology with a manufactured cycle, right? And so Star Trek was making the bikes, and I kind of saw that, and I wanted to replicate that a little bit. I happened to run into research and find an individual who was starting a rowing concept out on the West Coast called Indo Row. Josh Crosby, is an Olympic triathlete, and just so happened he went to Brown University, which was in my backyard. So there was a quick area way to connect with him. And so we started to collaborate. WaterRower eventually ended up becoming their signature piece. And that's really how they started to get into that group environment, right? And it was a way to kind of move 20, 25 units at a time versus the onesies and twosies. And so I just started to take that, and I continued to progress. And I just always wanted to be, kind of on the leading edge. I never wanted to be, Albert, that kind of Me Too, selling iron and steel, if you will. Mm-hmm. Now I have done that, but I wanted to be different. I wanted to kind of do things that were innovative, even if it was just on the hardware side. And that's kind of what led me to TRX as well, which is, I was part of their very first commercial sales team. This was around the launch of small group training in the industry. Nobody had ever thought about doing kind of a group environment out on the floor, with these black and orange straps. And I loved that. That was great. And I learned about programming, learned about, trainer-based education. Nobody ever thought that people would pay for programming and put it on the main floor. It was a culture change. And, we'll get into this later, right? Which is, it was so new at the time, and you just still see today now big operators just coming around to functional training, right? So it's a thing in this industry where a lot of laggards, and it was hard to get a lot of people to jump out ahead of it. But one of the things I learned there was, if you didn't hear it once a day, Albert, you heard it probably 2, 3, 4 times a week, which is, hey, this is great. We love TRX. It's such an awesome brand. It's such an awesome movement. You feel it in your core. Where do we put this? How many do we need? How much square footage do we need? How do we coach this? How do we sell this? How do we price this? And more than anything, it was like, what do we need and where do we put it? And we were always emphasizing to put it on your floor, but that kind of got me to thinking that it was just as much about where you were doing it in the environment in which you were, doing that exercise, right? As it was the actual programmatic methodology and the tool. And that led me to kind of help launch Active Solutions, which was really around functional training hardware, but they had an inherent fitness design division. And that really kind of coupled quite nicely with, hey, okay, now we can help them figure out what it's going to look like and where they're going to do it. What is it going to smell? What is the lighting? What is the flooring? and then layer in some really slick and intelligent fitness equipment to support that. And so that design is what early on I was very fortunate to catch up, and I was working with Hilton, where we ended up leading, in writing their entire global fitness design narrative. So there was an RFP out for their 14 brands. They wanted to rejig what fitness meant to them, and then each of the brands had to interpret that. So you had luxury, you had full service, you had the limited service brands, and everything was slightly different. So we led the design narrative through the fitness design group, and that kind of helped us influence put in fitness equipment through that design process. But during that process, we also started to speak a little bit about an in-room fitness experience. Okay, so rather than just rolling out a mat and having some bands and balls, could we really put this intentional fitness experience inside? And that's what we did. We put a rig in there with straps hanging off, and there was a digital component. We wheeled in a light fitness bike or a watt bike. We actually pulled up carpet from about 8 feet off the floor. And so the thought behind called 5 feet to fitness was you literally rolled out of bed and you were 5 feet from this fitness experience. And it was a global program. We took it overseas to Asia. We took it to Europe.
Wow.
But the thing that we learned through that was, now we're in a hospitality environment. People are going to hospitality to kind of relax. They've had long days. They're traveling, and we've got this rig with straps and medicine balls and slam balls, and everything was kick, pound, box, slam, punch. And what we realized that there was nothing in the way of recovery and restorative, and nobody was tending to that guest who had traveled 3,000 miles or had a red eye flight or
stretching,
sitting in a chair all day in corporate meetings, right? So, and that's what really led me to kind of partner up with a gentleman and really go after what was 3 stages, which was a digital innovation opportunity to help B2B operators deliver recovery and restorative. So we shot some amazing, beautiful content in places like Joshua Tree, all outdoors. And we looked at, recovery and restorative as kind of everything from your eyes closed through your, sleep and meditation and breath work, through your mindful movements, yoga, quick fixes and stretches. We had a partnership with Hyperice where we introduced, the Hypervolt and some of their traditional, more modern technology around recovery. And so we did that, and that was kind of right through the pandemic, and learned a lot. It was a first-time entrepreneur, and a lot of hindsight is 2020. A lot of things that that been a first-time entrepreneur again, I would do things differently. But it was a great experience, and we were very fortunate at the time. We brought on a group, Gymlete, to actually be our tech partner. And so I wasn't one of the original founders. I partnered into that shortly after. In fact, the original founder was a guy who was the head of the design division at Active, and who I worked with side by side when we did the entire Hilton project. And when he launched the business originally, it was intended to cater more to like the consumer. It was just a mobile app, and this was around the time of Headspace and Calm, and it was some big competitors. And so when I agreed to join the business and partner with them, it was under the understanding that we would move to a B2B, we would diversify the platform, and we would go where we knew, right? It was that B2B environment. We could go back to the hotels, we could go to the high-rise multifamily developers. And in order to do that, we actually brought on a tech partner, and that was Gymlete. And they came in and they rebuilt our mobile device. We had a really slick in-studio, in the built environment, touchscreen. Think of a huge iPad that kind of the video on demand was a lot like Netflix, and so you could get all these different experiences. And it was one of the concepts was sips of wellness. So everything was short format, quick 3, 5, 7, 10 minutes. How could you fit it between meetings? How could you fit it, after between breaks or between classes? And so first-time entrepreneur, both of us at the time, made some mistakes. I eventually stepped away from that business and transitioned and actually went over to Gymlete. And that's really where I spent the last 3.5 years. Yeah. Gymlete was an existing software development, digital innovation company who had really just focused most primarily on the fitness experience, Albert. And so they were creating movement tiles. Think of OTF, where you look up at the screens and you see back to OTF. You see what you're doing, and you can see how many movements you have to do and how long and what it's like. And so I joined them, and we really started to kind of move that needle, and that's where I headed up sales and biz dev for the last 3.5 years, and just worked with companies like Spenga and Mayweather and Nike Running Studio, and just more recently made a transition to over to gym tech, and kind of taken all of those things I learned, from hardware and technology and innovation and entrepreneurship and small to medium sized business, and now taking that over to gym tech, and looking forward to this new chapter.
So exciting. Before we get to gym tech, I'm sure everyone listening, who is this guy? Like, where is he coming from? Exactly how I felt when I first met you and we were going through all of this. And just so impressive. What an impressive background. And truly, you talk about tip of the spear, but really being ahead of the curve if you think about where we're at now. And I can't wait to unravel that on how you're seeing the current fitness industry model today. But you spent a lot of times with, and you mentioned here, some really impressive brands from Nike to Spenga to Hilton to OTF to I'm already forgetting a couple of them, but there were some big ones, TRX, right, and some others. What did you learn as you were not only a part of the sales process, but you actually transitioned into this strategic process, right? You started to learn not only what you were up to, but what they were doing in their business model. Hyperice was another one. Walk us through, what did you learn from many of these now? They were big then, they're bigger now, right? Big brand names that serve a lot of people in the wellness, fitness, and health space and longevity space. What did you pick up along the way from those brands?
Yeah, it's a great question. Different things from different groups. Some are in the hospitality space, some are in the
Right.
traditional fitness space, some are manufacturers, or TRX, and had a programming and a training education methodology. But um,
By the way, I remember TRX. The thing that sold me is Navy SEALs use this. I'm like, no way, I'm on it. I need to get the Navy SEAL core.
yeah,
It
I
was
mean obviously Randy, Navy SEAL, was the founder,
right.
and they have such a huge military business because of it still to this day.
Yep.
So some great stories. I mean, just to hear how he developed that off the side of a ship, trying to converse and kind of train his troops with little to no equipment on these ships. It's a great story. It still is, and a brand that I have just tremendous affinity for still, and still some great
So cool.
friendships that have kind of
Right.
lasted now, geez, almost 20 years. Um, but I think one of the things you always see is, and I think it's one of the challenges some operators face in the traditional dues paying space today is as a willingness to kind of step outside the box and try things that quote haven't been done before. I mean, you go back to TRX, and nobody ever thought we would get operators to pay for training and pay for trainer based education that went out on the floor. Now that was personal training, and Group X was in the Group X, and just getting to Hilton, who would have thought to actually like go away from just putting just checking out a mat in a set of bands at the front desk, is calling it your fitness room, right? To actually putting a fitness establishment inside of hotel rooms. And obviously Hyperice continues to be one of the just creating. They're now partnering with Nike and making shoes that that are recovery. So it's a willingness to step outside the box. It's a willingness to try things. And
Right.
listen, Albert, a lot of it comes with the ability and the resources, right? So we're talking Hilton, with their $1 billion company, right?
Sure.
So it's easier to take those risks, but they can be calculated. And TRX certainly wasn't, terribly cash rich when we were doing some of those things. And so I learned, ask a lot of questions. Um, I developed a real affinity for fitness professionals and the people that are on the ground and that are dealing and delivering these
Excellent.
experiences, whether it's a member, whether it's a hotel guest, whether it's a student. So just that aggregation of really leaning on the people that are doing the day to day. So that combination of some corporate, you know, ambition and willingness, coupled with understanding really what's happening. And if you can marry those two and get the guest experience right or the member experience right, and do it with the support from the corporate down, you tend to have better outcomes.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, just it's in Spangas and the Nike training studios. And for me, it's the introduction of technology, right? It's,
Mm.
you know, obviously this was way pre-COVID, but if COVID taught us anything, it's like,
Sure.
technology is what got people through COVID. And it's what, whether that was the Pelotons or the Hydros or that digital engagement. So, you take the technology, the wherewithal from these corporations to kind of think forward, think outside the box, and then the ability to listen what's happening at the ground level, listen to your coaches, listen to your staff. Those are the ones that are delivering the experiences. And oh, by the way, you need them as champions, right? Because any program you're going to try to instill in a B2B environment is always intended for somebody other than yourself, right? So you've got a guest, you've got a member, you've got a resident, you've got a student. And so you need the people that are be bought in, that are going to be delivering these programs that are different and innovative, maybe they're not familiar with. So you need to find their support, and you need to find some champions who can push that and be that person who's going to take the tip of the spear and kind of lead that for you. So it's a combination of everything, but a lot of it just boils down to having people who are certainly resourced and able to do these types of things, but are willing to kind of step outside the box. And if you fail fast.
So let me ask you about that, because I hear that a lot, and obviously I appreciate that, and you've probably seen, and those listening have seen, I'm pretty vocal, right? And by the
Yeah,
way, these
love it.
brands I'm about to say, they're all doing a lot of great, right? I just like to rattle the cage, so I throw out just some brands like Lifetime, LTH, right? Exponential, and their good old friend Sequel coming up, uh, and some others. OTF could be one of them. Hyper Ice was another one. All brands, by the way. I'm in those studios. I'm working out. I'm using the product. They're all great brands, but there are some things that I see as opportunity, or even an opportunity as a whole in the fitness industry, the wellness industry, that I think when you start talking about innovation, right, the technology, why do you think our industry, in many cases, these large boxes or these big names are quite behind? What's broken in the model right now as we hear experience and ecosystem, yet there still seems to be this missing glue, this missing connection. It's so disjointed.
Yeah, and another great question. And I think about it a lot, and I've done obviously a considerable amount of thought into and what holds them back. And I'm a little bit like yourself, and though I love how verbose you are and kind of challenging people. And look, I think we don't do enough of that in the industry, the media, and there's really no media in our organization that in this industry that's really poking holes. Everything's kumbaya, it's pay to play, and you
Right.
give us ad money, we're going to talk great stories about you. Because there's been some stuff that's happened in the industry over the last 3 to 5 years
Yeah.
that people should be talking about.
Oh, I'm,
Um,
I'm still waiting. Membership revoked. I'm waiting for it.
but but I think in general, and this may ruffle some feathers itself, is it's not a terribly mature industry, right? You don't, I mean, and I say this respectfully, there are some people that have been super successful and some people that I consider dear friends, but we're not talking about, brilliant, kind of engineers and mathematicians and finance and technology experts. And we're largely, if you think of operators, it's probably, a GM who, sold memberships, or, a fit pro who started a boutique studio. You think on the distribution side, it's probably, somebody who was a hard, a sales rep for one of your big manufacturers that wanted to do it and sell it to the, so you get the people that just aren't, you know, don't have the wherewithal, the resources, haven't come from outside the industry and seen other things. And it was one of the things I really tried to impress upon this industry was like learn from others, right? So a couple of years back, I spoke at IDEA, where if you looked at, what the car industry did, right? Which is we used to go to these car dealerships and it was row after row after row of just the same thing. And then, Tesla took that indoors, and all of a sudden they had, retail stores inside of malls. Or if you look at what Capital One did with a bank, right? Like it's not even a bank anymore; it's a coffee shop, and you can do some banking there. So it's
Yeah.
learn from industries, others outside the industry, and just they haven't really been able to do it. I think inevitably what happens is they don't know what they don't know,
Mhm.
and they tend to get into a little bit of like, well, this person doesn't understand fitness. This person, and that's what not to blow your smoke up, but that's what I love about what you're doing, specifically in your AI and your finance upbringing, is that you can walk in and you're not some finance guy who got his, Wharton MBA, or maybe you did, and that has never been involved in fitness, right? It's that, hey, look, I'm doing finance and I'm doing AI, but I understand fitness. I came from Lifetime. Like I understand. I'm in your shoes, and there's not enough of that, right? We need some outside influence, and we need some of the operators and some of the suppliers to kind of get outside of their comfort zone. There's just
Sure.
not enough of that because they tend to say, well, retail's not like fitness. They don't know fitness. Well, there are a lot of things that carry over. There are a lot of things that symmetries, and sure, you look through a different lens and you tweak some things. I There's just not enough groups and enough people that are willing to kind of be humble, let their guard down, and let great minds like yourself who've been there, done that, and rising tides will lift all boats. So I think there's just
Absolutely.
it's an immature industry for a lot of respects.
Yeah. And I think there's a shift going on though, and I think some are shaking in their boots because of it, because the old way, not saying it was a bad way, but it's just outdated. That old way is changing, and you have people like yourself, like Mo out there, like Kathleen Ferguson, Coach 360, Deborah Strugo, right? These names that are going in and they're going in hard with tech, with experience, meaning experience of the member experience, the team member experience, the operator mind in within fitness. I'm thinking Bob Thomas out of Next Gen. We're shaking things up, and I'm excited for it because I actually think whether although immature now, there's some learning lessons, and I think we're picking it up along the way. We're teaching others a different way to think, which is great because the end user, not only the customer or member, but the team member is going to be so much better off when we start to bring in some of these things that we know work in other industries, including the tech and the automation and the AI. It's going to allow us to actually impact lives, which we are all about in the fitness industry, changing lives, impacting lives, and creating a better lifestyle. So I'm really excited, and I want to talk to you about gym tech.
Let me just,
You
I want to add
did
to
an
that too,
announcement. You
Albert.
kind
I
of
mean,
subtly talked about it on LinkedIn, but I'll make sure to line this up when you really publicly go out there about it. But why don't you walk us through that? You made a post the other day around revolution, not renovation, and you have an amazing philosophy going into and now experiencing at Gym Tech. So if you don't mind sharing a little bit about that, of what you can thus far.
yeah, for sure, and it'll certainly be more public knowledge. But you know, not unlike many entrepreneurs who are trying to stand up businesses and grow your recurring revenue model and your line. And, we all got to eat, we all got to hunt, we've got families. And so I've been very fortunate through, Well Connected and some other things I've kind of done. And I've developed a lot of relationships where I've done a lot of things. And so while pushing Gymlete, I have been consulting for Gym Tech for the better part of the last year and a half. And for those that don't know Gym Tech, they're a fitness equipment distributor in the tri-state, New York, Connecticut, New Jersey. They have 4, soon to be 5, hopefully, retail stores. They've got a fantastic exclusive partnership with Precor on the retail side. They have a growing commercial division. But where they are specifically is in some of the most affluent places, in certainly in America, and you could even argue in the world. They're in the Hamptons. They've got a store in the Hamptons. They've got a store in Greenwich, Connecticut. They're in the middle of the Long Island. They're close to the Manhattan, right? So one of the things I've been really working with them on over the last year and a half is to innovate, to elevate their game, to move from a kind of a Me Too race to the bottom, fighting over a treadmill sale to really speaking more intelligently to their customer who has a beach house in the Hamptons, who's got a huge suburban house in the suburbs of Greenwich, right? And like these are multi-million-dollar homes. These are some of the most successful people in the world, right? So how does what they do? How do the curtains match the carpet? And so a lot of that digital innovation has gone towards relaunching a gorgeous new website that we worked with really close with a great digital partner in Pineapple. Is some of the other stuff that we're starting to do, introducing some AI, just simple bot technologies, because these people are busy, right? They're taking the train, they've got kids, and they're doing this and they're doing that, and they don't have time to leave a message and wait for somebody to listen to it. And so have a bot technology, just simple stuff that allows to move quicker and get answers to them faster. And so I've been working with them quite aggressively over the last year and a half to improve their digital and helping their techs use AI to sell better and have better talk tracks.
I love that.
Um, and so with that evolution and my shift from Gymlete, I'll move from that, just straight digital innovation to their chief operating officer, where I'll, oversee the whole business and try to obviously continue to infuse the digital, but lean on a lot of what I've done in commercial sales with some of the best brands. And it's kind of in my neck of the woods, if you will, up in the Northeast. So yeah, I'm super excited. I'm up for the challenge. There's a really, really good people there that are super talented. And, one of the guys, their head of commercial sales, I worked with previously at Active. And we're going to start adding some more bodies soon. So yeah, so I'll move from their head of just digital innovation and technology to their chief operating officer, and something I'm
Awesome.
super
Wow.
excited about.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Huge news and big wins. I'm sure the family's excited too. It's right in your backyard to
Yeah.
the impact you're going to make. And I'll tell you, and I'll tell them, hopefully the team's listening, they're lucky to have you. So that is
Well, thank
exciting.
you.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Well, let me pick your brain a little bit. There's a lot that goes behind the scenes, specifically around equipment. And actually, there's not a lot of shows or even conversation, at least I'm not privy to them, where you get to learn more about that side of the business, right? We typically talk about the front end, the onboarding phase of a new member within our industry, or personal training, right? Group training, small group training. But I think sometimes we forget just there's a lot of ins and outs when it comes to equipment and equipment life cycle planning. What do most operators misunderstand from your experience, as you've spent a lot of time with many different operators and businesses? What do they get wrong, or what do they misunderstand about the equipment life cycle planning?
It's there's a lot they get right, but there's a few things that they get wrong, and this is changing, and this speaks to some of the stuff that you do as well, right? Which is oftentimes, there's so many different ways to look at it, right? So you're opening a health club and budgets are tight, and there's only
Right.
so much you can afford, right? And so there's maybe getting some equipment and not necessarily listening to your members. You just do the same things because you're afraid to make mistakes, and so some of it is your equipment mix. Some of it is how you purchase it, right? The technology, and back to your earlier point, like I used to go to URSA, now HFA, every year, right? And um, I used to say to myself, like, everybody would be in these 20 by 20 boxes with music so loud you couldn't hear yourself think. And the only food options were like cheese dogs and curly fries, right?
I know.
And I'm like, what
I
are we
love the
doing
swag,
here?
but where's the food?
I'm like, what are we doing here? And fast forward to, a few weeks back with Athletic Tech in New York City. I mean, that was, by all accounts, really where this industry is going. And to your point, they are doing that. And there's the Moes and the Garretts and the Mike Hansons
Yeah.
are doing the Deb Schwagers. These are people that are really pushing the needle, right? So some of that goes to just in terms of how like the innovation that's happening to this equipment is happening in real time, right? So Mo, outside of what he's doing with ABC, Sweatworks, and introducing amazing engagement technologies, right? So how you acquire that stuff is important. Like, if you pay outright for it, then you're not leasing it and you're not turning it over every 3 years. Think of like a car, right? Like by the time you buy a car, you're like, oh, they got this new widget, they got this new technology, they got this new thing. So that ability to be smart about how you allocate your resources, and it used to be this whole thing where like, well, I'm not going to personal guarantee it, I'll just buy it, right? Like I'm not putting my name on that lease. And so they do, a lot of times they make the penny smart, pound foolish mistakes. So in terms of how you do it, because at the end of the day, like if you can be intelligent about how you acquire equipment, now you can get new equipment every 3 to 5 years. So you're staying current. You're probably keeping that under warranty. So you're not having any, unforeseen, hardware fees, right? So, or replacement fees, because we've all been there. We've all gone into in a hotel or a multifamily development, and you see the out of order sign. And a lot of times, and some of it is just how the developers and their property management companies work together. So you have these developers, and they got this build, and they just buy all the equipment, and then they turn it over to the management companies to manage it. And all of a sudden, a year into it, that treadmill needs a new deck or it needs a new belt, but they don't have the net operating, they don't have the NOI, they don't have the net operating income to actually do it. So it just sits there. So the foresight into this stuff is, we're talking about motors and computers and technology. it's just like it'd be like having a car and never getting an oil change, right? It doesn't take care of itself. So they missed the boat in a lot of like the foresight to, yeah, fancy, great, the best of the best, and we're going to get a bunch of members, and we're going to attract members, we're going to get them through the door. But then what? Like, what happens in 6 months? What happens in a year? Because then all of a sudden you're going to have to start
A
dealing
nice
with retention because
R&M
your shit's
bill.
not working.
Exactly. That R&M bill shows up, and it's like, uh-oh, now what?
Exactly. And so I just think there's been a lot of, it goes back to what I said earlier, and one of the things why I love what you're doing, which is helping from a finance perspective, helping put better, business practices and accounting practices and, understanding gap and all that stuff. And just like being able to help these people because you come from a fitness background and you're teaching them, coaching them, advising them on business principles. Again, we've got fitness professionals who all they've ever done has been a personal trainer now running businesses and acquiring equipment. They don't, and then it's not a knock on them. They shouldn't have that industry knowledge. They shouldn't have that finance background. And so that willingness to let others come in and help them and just have better vehicles of acquiring equipment. And then some of it is the manufacturers to try to help them do that as well. So I think there's a lot of mistakes, but it goes to just, you know, short-sightedness more than anything, and
Yeah,
understanding that this stuff it needs to be manicured.
yeah. Typically, when I lift up the hood, specifically in this category, it's typically just not a great understanding around cash flow. To your point, right? And how can we extend out? When we need to pay, when there's outflow, right? Obviously, keeping an eye and the most important thing, or the inflow of revenue, membership, personal trainer, whatever the ecosystem is, ancillary retail, and but also keep in mind where your cash is going and how quickly it's burning, right? And that's what I see to be one of the biggest opportunities, aside from reporting and data visualization, right, or dashboards, or pricing strategy or what have you. It's typically there's not a good understanding on the timing of when our inflows are coming in or outflows are going out, and some of the strategic moves you can make. We're talking about equipment here and different deals and leases and things like that, or if it's with the bank and loans, there's some smaller businesses that I work with as well that go that route, or even when you're raising and things like that. There's typically a lack of financial literacy, and different how to be creative, knowing how to be creative so that your dollar goes further, or you extend that checking account is not impacted so quickly. You have some time, some wiggle room. That's always been exciting, not only in an industry that I love, but also in something that just for me is naturally always come pretty easy, which is the mathematics of things. So I decided to put it together, and then like you, I get curious. I'm like, what is this AI stuff going on? A couple years ago or so, and it's exciting to see. It's starting to seep in into the fitness industry. And I'm not talking about wearables and tech because they're on a whole different playing field. I'm talking about brick and mortar, studio, big
Yeah.
box, small box. We're starting to see it a little bit. And I think, again, going back to it's going to impact and change lives even better. The lifestyles are going to be healthier. So, you talk a lot about smart gym tech in the fitness space. You get to see really behind the scenes and work with some amazing people. What's kind of coming in the short to mid long term horizon?
Yeah, I mean, you've touched upon it. Obviously, the wearables and some of the things that you can do, today is pretty amazing, and they seem to be a new wearable tech every day. But
Right.
I just, one of the biggest things I see kind of on the horizon, and something I've been very keen about, and I did some consulting for them, is this marrying of the mind and the body.
Mhm.
And I think we've got all of this wearable tech that tells you your heart rate, tells you, your body mass index and all that good stuff, right? Um, but I think that it really stops here. And this is your most important tool, right? And so I think one of the things we're going to start to see, and I've seen it, there's some great studios coming out, and there's some great technologies that are helping, whether it's with depression, brain technologies, and whether it's, virtual reality to help kids focus better. I think the biggest shift I see, and I'm excited to see, and I could be wrong. And look, I was at TRX in, I think like the, 2005 to 2009 with the launch of small group training, and they're still laggards just now putting functional training spaces in. So, it's all relative. But I think the biggest thing I see and what I'm excited about, and I really hope it does, which is this kind of marrying of the mind and the body. We have all of these things that help you get bigger, faster, stronger, and understand your biometrics. Then how do we combine, a healthy brain with a brain that's functioning really well, and that's not stressed, that's not depressed, that's not damaged, if you will. And if it is, we have some things like exercise with oxygen therapy, and then kind of transcranial magnetic stuff. Like these are things that I think are critically important. And if we can, look, whether it's kids on cell phones, it's kids that my age, when we played football. I mean, I was playing tackle football when I was 7. I could barely hold my head up with a helmet. I was always back. I mean, God knows what's going on up there, right? So this, I think, I'm excited about, and I hope it does happen to come to fruition for more reasons than one, which is this just full understanding that that wellness is from the top of your head to the tip of your toes, right? And and most people forget what wellness really, how wellness started, right? People now think fitness and wellness are different, right? So fitness is for your body, and wellness is kind of this recovery, restorative, this mindfulness, if you will. But wellness is a combination of well-being and fitness, right? That's how wellness came to be. It took the well from well-being and then S from fitness. And so this real marrying of the two, and how do they live in concert. And there's just some pretty amazing technologies out there that are very brain and kind of head and focus specific. But I think when you pair those up with the physical attributes, I think there's some cool things that are coming down the pipe.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. I'm sure you saw it, but in my personal journey, and I've been pretty vocal about this, both in the corporate arena and then in some other things that I do here, obviously with Stratego and Valsites. So I had quite a bit of anxiety. So when we talk about mental health and things like the panic attacks, and eventually found, after many stubborn years, found that I had a pituitary tumor, which everything's fine now, thankfully, through good help and support system, as well as peptides and all of this stuff. I'm really excited about the tech that I'm seeing, from brainwave activity and breath work and all of those things that can really help people out, especially when they're go-getters. They're just naturally anxious because they want to go after the next thing, or work hard and achieve and all of that. So, and I know there's a lot of kiddos out there. I got 3 of my own, and I'm constantly watching to see, am I seeing any signs of any of that stuff, and so that I can intervene quicker. But there's so many things that we can use now, so many tools that we can use now. If you were a betting man, right, there's this cold and hot contrast, and the sauna and the cold plunge and the peptides and the GLPs and the mindfulness thing. There's sleep pods, I think now. I think Matt J? He has the Lifts podcast over at Escape.
Anasic, yeah.
He was wearing something. I'm like, I had a DM. I'm like, what the heck is that? I need it. I want it. Where are you putting your money? Where are things going? Where do you think, what's going to be the hot thing where you get the best ROI? And I'm writing this down, by the way. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, there is some incredible technologies, right? And so I did some stuff with NeuroTrainer, which their whole thing was around, delivering technology inside of virtual reality, and it was intended to help kids focus better, right? Because this attention economy, most kids lose attention after 18 seconds, which blew my mind. I got 2 daughters who are teenagers now, and they're always on their phone. And but one thing that I think will be prohibitive to fast adoption is how accessible are they, right? How many kids can go out there in the grand scheme of things and afford virtual reality headset? Now they're getting obviously a lot more affordable, but right. But it's going to be these things that are mainstream, that are easy to do, that don't require a huge amount of resource. And you touched upon one of them, which is breath work, right? Like breath work it's free. Everybody can do it, but most people don't know the benefits to it, right? That, most people don't know what box breathing is, and it's so simple. But so I think that the things will, inevitably the high tech will become more mainstream. It will become commoditized, and you'll be able to, look in your glasses just like you can in virtual reality.
Right.
Some of that's already coming. But I think that true wellness, that true brain stuff is going to start with stuff that's just readily available, right? And it's going to happen in the B2B environment. It's going to happen in the school environments where they're paying for it. It's going to have to be in situations where it's in a B2B space and you pick it up and you learn about it. And hopefully you eventually have enough resources to go and acquire some of that stuff yourself. But, it's a brain tap for Matt Janisic, or it's a headset for, a virtual reality.
Yeah.
I'm fortunate I've got a couple, but not every kid's like that. And I think that's, for me, coming from, the inner city, if you will, and coming, living in Section 8 housing as I grew up, like, I would have never even dreamed about having a virtual reality headset. I was lucky to have two cleats that matched, right? And I think that the reality is these are the kids who are depressed and who are anxious and wondering if they're going to have a meal on the table when they get home, or so it's hard to say. I think those technologies, they're still a little ways off, but they have to be more accessible. And right now, I just don't see a bunch of those technologies as super accessible. And even in the boutique environment, right? Like if you're going to go to a place that's going to get some brain training technology, you're looking at 40, 50, 60 bucks a session. That's not for everybody.
Right.
But I am fascinated by it. I'm trying to understand all the different technologies, but no, that was one of the really nice parts about Three Sages, which is, we were delivering, all you had to do was breathe, right? Like, how do you get a quick 5-minute breathwork session to help you find some recovery and some peace and some inner tranquility. And that is just what kids need. We need to do a better job of, as an industry, of coaching and teaching the little ways to take care of yourself.
Yeah. Some of the best breathwork training I did, it was back in Laguna, California, but it was with Gabby Reese's team, XPT.
Yeah.
It was awesome. And I'd love to put on a wearable to do granted, they do it underwater, so I don't know how that would work out, but that'd be pretty cool to get a workout like that. The thing is, what was it, 2024, when OpenAI kind of splashed on the page and disrupted. Right before that, though, Meta, Apple, and some others, this whole VR and AR was blowing up, right? Pokemon Go and all of these things, right? And I think it took a little bit of a backseat, but at least in the circles I'm in, I'm hearing a lot of chatter about money flowing, capital flowing into the VR space. We're seeing it at sporting events now. We're going to start seeing it for, other concerts, events, conferences, podcasts. But then a lot of this gamification, right? I get on the MetaQuest with the boys, and we play a little pickleball. It's a lot of fun. So I see a lot of that still. There's still much more to come, and I think that price will start to drop further so that it's more accessible. To your point, accessibility is huge. A big part of that is price, and so
in comfort, right?
Yeah.
How do you make it so that you put on a pair of glasses versus this strap over your face and you get a little distorted and you mess up your hair during the day, right? Like, so I think that's part of it, which is just the awkwardness of doing movement and activity with this thing on your face. But, as we've seen with cell phones, right? And it's gone from this in your car with a cord attached to it and this big thing to, cell phones fit in your pocket now. Like, when it becomes more accessible from a comfort perspective, and then you couple that with more attainable cost, then you can start to really make some pretty cool things happen.
Yeah, that's good. Well, you posted something recently, and oh man, you had me cracking up, but then also like, man, he's on it. You said we're still selling harder to the same 20%. You're talking about the fitness industry. We're still selling harder to the same 20%. Can you walk us through what were you talking about there, and then what's the fix in your opinion?
The thing is, when I started in this industry 25 years ago, there's really no difference from today. And it's starting to get a little bit better, but there's only 20% of the U.S. population that's ever stepped foot in a health club. And that number hasn't moved, maybe 1 or 2 percentage points. And so we keep trying to sell the same widgets or different ways to do it to the same exact people. Right. And we're not pulling in that other 80%. And so that was the kind of the context, which is, everything we're trying to do is make it more accessible, get people in, drive engagement. And we need to start really taking a hard look at ourselves and like, what are we doing wrong as an industry? Because truthfully, you look outside this industry. If anybody did the same thing for 25 years and their numbers of members or customers didn't move, the industry wouldn't survive. And somehow this industry continues to survive, thankfully. But we just keep regurgitating different technologies and different widgets and a bigger screen or a faster treadmill or one that goes to 30%, like to the same people. But we're not pulling in the other 80% of people. And so to a lot of our conversation, how do we do that? And it's introducing, different things. It's introducing maybe more of a recovery methodology that they're interested in. Maybe, the GLP stuff, which is, maybe one of the big reasons that people aren't coming is because they're embarrassed, right? Because how they look, or they don't want to walk into the gym because they're too big, right? Whatever we can do, and to put our brains together, and Bob Thomas and Kathleen Ferguson and Deb Strawargo and the Moes of the world, these are people who are pushing the needle, who understand that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. They're the ones who are introducing different technologies, introducing different digital innovation, introducing and pushing the industry to kind of follow, because otherwise we're going to continue to be stuck on that 20% number, and that's just not going to move the industry. So it truly is the definition of insanity. If we keep doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result, we need to find ways to look ourselves in the eye and look ourselves in the mirror and say, what can we do collectively as an industry? And rising tides will lift all boats. And it's one of those things, and I'm sure we'll touch upon it, which is this industry has often lived very much in silos, and protect this, I'm going to protect my secrets, I got to fight for this member, and but the reality is you got a Planet Fitness member who goes to a studio, who goes to a yoga studio, who does recovery and ClassPass, if you will. They're already doing it, right? And so I equate it a little bit to like, whether with medical records, right? So every doctor now has the ability to see a medical record because it's readily accessible, and so this interoperability, this communication, this collaboration, and if we can do that, all of a sudden we're going to start to attract 80% of the people, and there's going to be plenty of business for everybody to be had if we can start to, whether it's APIs, whether it's not living in silos, whether it's sharing resources and this collaboration of getting Peloton, if you will, onto something other than Precor. And if it's getting an iFit technology onto a Matrix treadmill, even though that they're coupled with free motion, those are the time that eGym's doing a great job of that. So it's the ability to do things differently and work together to understand the problems. And obviously we've got some great leadership at HFA now who are continuing to fight for things at the national level.
See that.
All you had to do is look at COVID, where they looked at gyms as kind of like as a place you wouldn't want to go. And the reality is it's the first place they should go to get healthy and do the types of things that it should be looked at as more of like a hospital than a nightclub. And unfortunately, that comes with leadership, that comes with collaboration, that comes with people kind of all getting together and syncing their brain power. And there's a lot of it, don't get me wrong. When I say sometimes we're immature, there's some really forward-thinking, brilliant businessmen, women, innovators who have the capacity to do some amazing things. And if we can continue to collaborate, Athletic Tech, I think, was just something that really got me energized in terms of what came out of that and how many people were communicating with each other and sharing ideas and resources and different technologies. So hopefully we can start to move that 20 to 30 to 40% and start getting a lot more people into these facilities that can experience these amazing technologies and be healthier and get brain technology and do well-being and breath work and do all your traditional fitness stuff.
Yeah, man, I wish I was there. I saw a ton of videos. One, Kenny interviewing everybody, and then obviously I know he goes by Edward, but Eddie doing his thing. I mean, they're doing such an amazing job. What a great way to bring everyone together. And I know there's some other events coming up later on in the year. One in Dallas, right? Beyond Active and that whole crew should be.
They do a fantastic job.
Yeah, it should be a lot of fun. I can't wait because that's just a little drive from me. I'll head over there. That's exciting. You got me thinking a lot right now as you were talking about the reason why I said I was cracking up when you posted it is it's the whole, I come from sales and obviously finance ops and all of that within the industry. And we call it recycling member. We're fighting for the recycled members. It's just this cycle that we keep going through doing the same thing. And it was too funny when I read that. But like finance and financial literacy, I always wish that it was taught more earlier, in life, in the education system. I was talking to my wife the other day, speaking of fitness. We used to do, you remember those fitness assessments? And there's like this box you had to put your feet in, and then you do your like sit-ups. It was a whole test, right? To show
Yeah.
your physical readiness or whatever they called it, right? And I'm like, have you ever, or my wife's Danielle, have you heard if our kids are doing that at all whatsoever? And like, absolutely not. I'm like, what is going, it's completely changed. And I think you're right. I actually think that's an area. And to your point, it's not to erode margins. Like there's going to be so much more business because there's 80% more of people that haven't walked into your studios or into your club. And I actually think, like I mentioned, like finance, there's just so much opportunity much earlier on in life for us to get. And this is good. Like we're teaching everyone to have a healthy lifestyle. And why not go earlier on within our education systems, sports, or what have you? I think a lot of these big brand names should actually be spending some time there. I don't know. Something to think about. What are your thoughts?
I think a lot about it, and I think you're spot on. And I'll add to that, but I'll comment too, which is, when you and I were kids, we were learning state capitals, right? They don't need to learn state capitals anymore.
Right.
And that's, they can Gemini or GP, what's the state, right? So I've been a big proponent, and my wife would probably tell you how many times, like, I want my kid learning how to do a lemonade stand, or I want my kid
Right.
learning how to be healthy and fit, right? And the things that are going to help them be better humans and better people.
Mhm.
So yes, absolutely. But then, and one of the other things that I think plagues this industry as you go through that education journey, obviously teaching kids at a younger age to be physically fit and mentally fit and what that means in a longevity perspective, which is we don't do a good enough job in the industry of creating professions, creating careers, right? You think of personal trainers, you think of fitness people, it's a part-time job, it's a gig that they get because they're burnt out at their corporate job. But to sink into the university system, or that you should major in personal training, you should major in health club management, right? Like these are things that could be careers
Yeah.
versus jobs. And I think if we start to look at it as a profession and not a side hustle and not something I'm going to go and get my workout in and earn a couple extra bucks, like, so obviously starting at a younger age, I think that's a great idea. We don't need, and we should rejig the education system to be teaching these kids how to do things that are life skills, because understanding what the state capital of Idaho is just not really that important, let's be honest. But then also taking and carrying that through is, how do we get education and curriculum to build careers in fitness, not jobs? And I think if we can start to kind of connect the dots from a younger to the higher education system, we're going to get people coming out that are more credentialed and understanding how to run and have better financial literacy and understanding the unit economics behind fitness establishments, and maybe we can start to have some better efficacy across the board. But yeah, I agree with you 100%.
Well, you made me think of something actually, and I got to get this off my chest now, and I got to ask you your opinion. Um, you brought up the HFA. I'm a huge fan. Liz and team are doing a great job. Love seeing the photos and the videos, everything that they're doing over in DC at the White House. I was so disappointed to see what happened here recently with
Yeah.
the Fit Clause or the Fit Bill. But the one that I couldn't get my arms around or my heart into was this rule that continues to be postponed. It's the one click cancel. And I saw some of these amazing people within our industry actually say, no, we want this extended. We don't want this to happen. And I started scratching my head. I'm like, this is why we still have issues. We're not understanding the modern era that we're in, this world of convenience and hyper personalization. And don't make me mail something in or click 9,000 times or search wherever the heck I need to search to cancel. What are your thoughts on that? Like, why can't we get over that hump of that is not the issue. The one click is not the issue. The experience and the hyper personalization that you're not investing in is the issue, not over here. Thoughts on that one?
Yeah. And I'll take a slightly different angle than maybe I think what you might have thought, which is, but I think you were maybe going there towards the end of your statement there, which is we're looking at the result and not the cause, right?
Exactly.
And one of the last things I did at Gymlete, we had a partnership and we acquired a 5-star trainer, which is Justin Faust, and he's one of the foremost experts, if not the subject matter expert in outsourced personal training. And one of the things he really was as adamant about doing is introducing it to his technology. And I'll get there. I'll pull this all together, which is we're very reactive.
Mm-hmm.
We wait till they cancel and try to understand why, right? And can we introduce things and so get a rating system like a Google review, if you will? Like we need to understand and need to communicate with customers and members and these people way before they cancel. The cancel is the result. The reason they're canceling is because we're not doing a good enough job helping them either have a communication system. So, hey, look, that trainer was terrible. He was too loud. He or she's not my cup of tea. The bathrooms were smelly. And I think of, I'm working with a gentleman, Mike Tisdale, who's now got a technology called GymGuard, and they're trying to introduce some ways where when you go into a fitness amenity, you can scan a QR code and you can remain anonymous. Like we have to do a better job of taking critiques and criticisms and understanding where the gaps are, so that if we're fighting over how they can cancel, then we've already lost. What we need to do is reallocate some energy and some bandwidth to understanding why they're getting there to begin with, and how do we intercept that. And hey, you need a different trainer. Hey, I'm sorry that tread was broken. It was out of order. Like the problem is that we're not understanding why they're getting to cancel, and what we're doing is all of a sudden it's too late, and now we're like, oh, we can't let them cancel that quick because we didn't get a chance to talk to them. Well, you had plenty of chances to talk to them. You just chose not to put a system in place that allowed them to have a mechanism to voice their concerns.
Right.
So we're more intentional and more thoughtful and more receptive to constructive criticism and feedback. And look, I get it. You're always going to have individuals, who you're just never going to make happy, and that's just the nature of the beast. And that happens in every industry, not just the fitness industry. But the lion's share of people, they want to be there. They want to be happy. They want to have community. And look, if you look at COVID, what COVID taught us is that sure, we need technology and innovation, but in real life experiences are critical. That's why people came running back to the clubs, because they want community. They want to be there with others. But if you're not delivering the experience and the engagement that's allowing them to feel like they belong there, you're not creating an environment that is welcoming and communal, then that's the reason they're canceling. So pay more attention on delivering a better experience. You're going to have to not worry so much about 1-click or 2-click or 3-click cancels.
Yeah. Well, going back to maybe just a lot of those that we know that are in leadership roles within the fitness, wellness, and longevity space, maybe they just don't know what is possible. You're a great example, and one that's in the trenches when it comes to innovation and being the tip of the spear. So do you have any use cases or practical recommendations when using AI inside of fitness and wellness, maybe even to hyper personalize the member experience or make operations far more efficient? We brought up the example too of supply chain and equipment planning and life cycle planning. What are maybe a couple things that for the audience as they're listening and wondering, well, how the heck do I use this stuff? How can I integrate it? What are some use cases today that are for sure it can happen right now that would benefit their business?
Yeah, and I'll name a few. And one of the things I have perceived, and I think it's still this way, and there are some pretty cool people cool groups out there that are using AI. And when I look at fitness, right, or at least what I do now, is there's the acquisition, then there's the experience, right? And you've got to find these customers, these members, or these guests. Then you've got to influence them to want to come to your place, and then deliver some pretty innovative and cool experiences. I think where AI currently sits a lot more, and there's a lot more use cases and examples, is in the operational of the acquisition space versus the experience. Like there's the Lumens, and there's some pretty cool AI fitness apps and technologies out there, but they're fewer and far between than what are the use cases for for leveraging it. And, whether it's hire Bob, and, I had a fantastic conversation with Terry Woods the other day, and it's going to help solve some of the engagement problem as well, which is, this industry is saturated, and you can go into New York City or any major metropolitan area, and there could be 5 studios in a square block, right? And so if you don't answer the phone quick, I'm going to go to the next one. I'm going to go to the next one. And it's this kind of this pace of like, inquiry to trial. So I think where AI is really being beneficial, and you think of operators, is in kind of this operational, this acquisition phase where you can have some bot technologies that are answering questions quicker, that you're training up, and because look, fitness, and we've talked a lot about it, whether it's brain technology, whether it's red light therapy, whether it's GLP-1s, putting a kid in a part-time position, for 15 or 20 hours a week, and trying to get him or her to explain all of your things that you have going on in your health club right now, forget it. Like,
Yeah.
you need to leverage AI to help. So if somebody, you put, 40, 50, $60,000 into some red light saunas and some contrast therapy, like, leverage AI to help you educate your members, right? So I think there's a great part of that. And the other thing is, I presented to a large group of a distribution company, one of the and I won't name names, but at HFA, and I had the presentation all together, and I was going to talk about automations and RAG and all that stuff, and they were like, "Whoa, slow down!" It was like right over my head, right? And if you can just introduce it into ways to get lead generation, ways to to write better email. I look at some of these emails that come across from some of these reps, and I'm like, dude, did you read this? One use case I'll talk about, like, I had a great conversation with a distributor. And if you're, distributing fitness equipment to what we call vertical markets, non-dues paying environments, so whether it's a school or a municipality, they're all going out to RFP, right? Mm-hmm. And so how do you use AI to help you find them? Then write the response a heck of a lot better, right? And use AI to teach you how to be more affluent, to be more grammatically correct, and sure, do your homework and read over it, because it's your reputation. But I really see it in a lot more of the operational, and this oversaturated, get back to the customer super fast. And I've done this at Gym Tech now, which is, and we talked a little bit about it, is use it to respond quicker, use it to, hey, but be open about it, right? One of the things I was intentional about with Gym Tech specifically when we introduced bots was, like, when her name's Elizabeth, it was like, hey, I'm a voice bot. Like, I'm not a person, I'm not a human, but I'm here to make your life easier, because I want to get you answers quicker, further, faster, because you're busy, and I really respect your time. And so what I'm going to do is take this information, I'm going to get it to a live body as quickly as possible, and give them the information so that when they call you back, they're not wasting your time, right? So I really think that just using it in the operational end, or as I call the acquisition, to be smarter, to be faster, to be, to deliver better information to your members, it's going to come in the experiential space. I still think it's a little far off from where it lives right now. And, I listened to, speaking of Beyond Active, Mark Watterson was chatting last year at Beyond Active in New York City, and it's such a great job. They do such a fantastic job. And he was saying, look, we're in 15 different languages, and to use AI to just, to incorporate and to interpret and to translate their content into different languages. So there's just so many things I think that you can be doing. But when I presented to the team in Denver, in Vegas, at HFA, it was like, look, and you see a lot of this still. Well, AI is going to replace us, and we don't want to do that. And look, and I said to him, I go, if you think AI is going to replace you, then I'm the wrong person to talk to, because you're wrong. You're wrong. Like, at the end of the day, like the sales process specifically, that's a human element, a relationship. But if you're not using AI to get more leads, to write better proposals, to find, to deliver better experiences, the people that are going to fly past you. And so just start somewhere. Don't be shy. Like, ask questions and be comfortable getting outside of your comfort zone, But I really think in that operational, the acquisition place is where a lot of the best use cases are happening right now.
I think a lot of people listening are going to be really excited to hear that, because obviously, especially in our world here in the fit, that's a big one, right? That's many of us came from that side of the business, and we know it's a hustle, it's a grind, and I think there's so much efficiencies to be had there using automation and now AI. The other place that I like spending time in is the below revenue, which is the expense line items, from procurement to agreements. And I think you might have posted something about this too. When you're looking at vendor contracts, when you're looking at, as an operator, even your supply spend, right? There's so many different, especially for some of these big boxes, like you think of a Lifetime or an Equinox or some of these boutiques, towels to tissue paper to some of their hand soaps and their body wash or their shower gels and all of that. You can start to use AI to see trends and start to see some waste. R&M, another one, right? You start to see things ahead and be proactive, especially when you have all of that equipment data and their lifetime and usage, and you start to whip that all up using AI. You can get to decisions much quicker and actually prevent some things from happening in the future because of all the data that you're acquiring there, and sifting through securely through this technology that we have at our fingertips. So there's so many ways not only to go grow revenue with AI, as Justin's mentioning, but also how do you protect your cash? Going back to our earlier comment about cash flow, protecting your cash with all the things, all those bullets that are flying at you as an operator, where you don't have to be manually doing and staying up till midnight every night, scrubbing through your supply lists and what do I need to order? Why am I over ordering? Why does this cost so much? There's so many things that you can do to using this technology to have a far better running business rather than the business running you. So I love that you brought that up. We mentioned wearables earlier, and I meant to ask this then earlier in the episode. What, any particular, I don't know if you're allowed to say the names, but anything particular that specific to wearables that you're personally bullish about that just excites you right now?
I don't know if there's anything that's particularly exciting me. I think the combination of the wearables and the data that can be pulled from them in this world of hyper personalization,
Right.
and it kind of segues to what we were just talking about, which is we've lived in a world of silos where finance is over here and procurement's over here and the fitness to team's over here. And so you've got these wearables that are giving you just immense amounts of data, right? That are great for the fitness experience. They're great for retail because you can see what people are using and why they're using it, and can you sell them in your pro shop. So what I think I love best about the wearables is just the data that can come off of them. And we talk about AI and we talk about these LLMs, like and creating some of these internal ones, which is get smarter. Like data's the new oil, right? Data's the new gold, and data's the new air, if you will. Like get intentional about what you're doing with your data and be be smart. Like then back to the kind of like some of this immaturity of our industry. We don't have big servers and we don't have these really more modern ways of storing data that some of these other industries do. But like, how can we take what's coming off of these wearables, combine it with other things to just make better decisions? Because at the end of the day, we have an engagement issue in the industry, and we've talked about this, and we talked a little bit about where would AI be really good, which is if we can get AI and we can get data and we can get these wearables to deliver the information we need to, and take that out of the hands of people who maybe aren't as knowledgeable about talking about it anyway, that's going to free these people up, so that when people do walk into your gym, that other 80%, you can accommodate them, you can speak with them, you can humanize with them, you can give them a tour, you can allocate the time that's necessary to develop the relationships to be able to get them to stay longer, to feel comfortable. So I know that didn't necessarily answer your question in terms of which
No, it
one
did.
you're
Yeah, no.
about, but I do think I see some of the stuff that Garrett's doing, and your kind of at home kits where you prick your finger and you send it back. Like that's
Yeah.
the type of stuff that people want these days, right? Like they want to understand what's going on in their bodies, and whether it's a body composition scan, with eVolt in it. But I think even that is Because what happens oftentimes, and I don't know if you've ever seen one of these, the reports that come off of these scans, whether it's
Oh
InBody
yeah.
or T-Bolt, or it's Chinese to most a lot of people, and I mean that respectfully. Like it's just a
Yeah.
different language, and so can we use AI to help interpret it? Can we use this technology to feed it to a personal trainer who it does make sense? And I even go back to, TRX, if you will, when we would tell people till we're blue in the face that you need to do this and work on your core, and you've got a posterior tilt that's not beneficial for you. And they're like, you're just saying that. But if you can introduce technology and get in front of a map screen and do a squat with your hands over your head, and all of a sudden that data spits it out.
Yeah.
Now it's not you telling me. You're not a used car salesman. You're not a personal trainer just trying to tell me something to sell me a membership package or a personal training package. So it's this combination of wearables, of data, of AI, and using all of this innovation and technology to allow us to be able to do our engagement type stuff, our human element, a lot better and more of it. But I'm certainly intrigued by some of the ones that are, there's obviously you're familiar with the common wearables and your heart rate straps and your, some
Yeah.
of those things. But I think some of this,
They always tell me
that,
I'm stressed out of my mind. I'm like, I feel great. What are you talking about?
and you don't know what you don't know,
HRV.
right?
Yeah.
I
It's
mean,
too
shoot, my
funny.
my wife is works for a medical skincare practice, and she's bringing home some supplements and some peptides and some NAD,
Oh,
and she's
love
like,
it.
just take it, Justin. It's going to help you recover. It's going to help you.
Yeah.
And look, it's my wife, so
Are you
I'll
taking it?
yeah, absolutely. But
Good.
it's my wife, so I trust her. But it's not that easy, right? And so the
Right.
ability to use these things to certainly get people healthier, but to have the ability to understand how to talk to people about it using AI, and then using your human element to kind of coach people and congratulate them, and tell them that they're doing the right things, and hopefully that's going to get people to stick around longer and more
Man.
people to come.
And I'm only saying this because I know that the audience that is watching this will drive something home for them, or at least make them feel a certain way, positive or negative. We'll see. Because I posted it about it. But as you're talking about data collection, right, wearables to hyper personalization within the experience, engagement, the sales function, all this behavioral big data. I mean, we used to talk about this all the time, back in the day. And it's now back even more because there's far more data. It's easier to get in a sense if you're paying attention to it and you're valuing it with AI and all of that. But CrossFit, I think I was talking to someone about High Rocks the other day, and CrossFit is one of those brands, and one day maybe Don will watch this. Right? It's like that is a brand, and I wish all of these resources, all of these different verticals, they truly just pick them all up, and because CrossFit, man, it's such a cool and great brand, and I wish they were just so innovative and picking up all of these little gems. Man, they should listen to this episode and pick up all the gems that you're laying down, and I hope they survive. We'll see. It's just one of those brands. I don't know why. Maybe it's because I was too a college football player and powerlifting and CrossFit warehouse. I'm like, it's awesome, and I just see what's going on out there, and who knows? We'll see what happens. Sorry to lay that down. I'm getting some stuff off my chest today, and that was
You're preaching
wonderful.
to the choir. When I was at Gymlete, Jeff Lawton, who was the founder and the chief software architect, he came from the CrossFit world. He had a CrossFit box, and I used to just like pound him, like, they have this phenomenon of, if you look at
Addicts.
anything like the community that they've built, health clubs would die for, right? Like, if you could take their community and combine it with what's going on in some of your big box health clubs or some of your traditional and fitness environments, that are backed by private equity now, that have the resources to do some of these cool technology things. If you could take the technology and the data and all that's happening there, combine it with this, High Rocks is doing a little bit of it now, or a lot of it as well, that engagement, that community, coupled with your hyper personalization, you would have this unicorn. And for the life of me, that and some of it is,
It's the
you
affiliate.
do what you do and you stick to what and if you found gold, you keep digging for gold. And often, I'll say that as an entrepreneur the last 5 years, you start a business, you develop a product, and you get a little bit of traction, and then you're kind of on to developing another one. Like, why? Just keep doing what you're doing, right? So it's easy to get distracted. But I think if you don't continue to innovate, you don't continue to think outside the box, and at least entertain some of those, you could die a slow death. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, it looks like that's what's happening there.
I hope they get revived. Something changes because that's a great lifestyle brand, or could be a great lifestyle brand. Again, with the fanatics, their ethos. I mean, you're right. It's a unicorn. It's unmatched. They could really press on that and come back. We'll see. We'll see. Unless High Rock swallows them up. I hope not. So I got this question, last question, and I know we're a little over, so I appreciate your time. I got this one on LinkedIn. What's your one prediction for the future of wellness tech in the next 12 months?
My one prediction for wellness tech in the next 10 months or 12 months. I'm a little bit bullish on it, and I hope I'm right, and I hope it doesn't take longer. But I do think, and back to kind of what I touched upon earlier, I think you're really going to start to see some of your more brain technologies, brain training, brain awareness, brain care, brain methodologies. How do we introduce tech more intelligently to help us understand that this, whether it's a muscle or it's an organ, whatever you call it, like this is kind of the root of everything that we do and who we are and our emotions. And I think and I've started to see some signs of it. There's some cool studios doing some stuff. Like a former buddy of mine at TRX, who's a VP of global sales, has a pretty cool methodology with exercise with oxygen therapy and some of the things that are really kind of introducing, some more ways to cure the brain and the stresses. And I think you're going to start to see more of your brain technologies start to introduce and infiltrate and find ways into your traditional health clubs.
I can't wait. I can get all behind that. I hope you're right, and cannot wait. So for the audience, if they want to get to learn more about you, gym tech, or everything that you do, or even connect with you, where can they do that?
The best thing is LinkedIn right now. So Justin Campbell, it's connect with me there, DM me there. J Campbell at Gym Tech Fitness will be the email address. But yeah, I mean, I've got handles and social media, but I think right now, and specifically in the world that I live in, the B2B LinkedIn connections, which is where we matured our relationship as well. That's the best place to find me. DM me, introduce, connect with me, and let's have a conversation. I believe aggressively. I had a sales leader of mine who taught me the learners are the earners. So I'm hungry to continue to learn. I'm hungry to share my knowledge. I really believe this industry will grow as we collaborate, and rising tides will lift all boats, and break down the silos. And inevitably we've got to make some money, and we've got to have some competitive nature, and that's inherent in a lot of people. But what I'd love to collaborate with people. Reach out to me, any questions, anything I might be able to help with. I'm eager to learn, and I'm eager to help.
So good. Well, we need you, sir. So keep pushing us, keep challenging
We
us.
need you as well. I'm so grateful for the invite, but I'm really, really grateful for what you're doing. You put the feet on the ground. You get out. You meet with the operators. You're doing the things that are necessary to be the tip of the spear. And I love the fact that you're not afraid to be a purple cow and kind of step out and kind of do some things differently and ruffle some feathers as well, because we need that as well. So kudos to you. Keep doing amazing things, and I can't wait to keep collaborating with you down the
I
road, brother.
appreciate that. So good. Well, this wraps up the special edition Beyond the Ledger of the Vital Sites podcast. Huge thanks to Justin Campbell for challenging, as you heard, the status quo and helping us reimagine the future of wellness, gym tech, and digital transformation. And if you're a wellness leader, if you've been listening, you probably caught on the finance side of things. If you're looking to sharpen your finance strategy or bring AI in your operations, reach out to me, or you can always learn more at valsites.com or strategointel.com. Until next time, I'm your host, Albert Ramos. Justin, thank you so, so much. This has been the Val Sites podcast. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, brother. Be good. Ciao.
Ciao.